Hey guys, Ace here, and welcome back to another episode of the Honest Review series. For this episode, we will continue covering the recently released Elden Ring DLC, Shadow of the Erdtree. I'm very excited to continue covering Shadow Keep, which might be one of my favorite legacy dungeons from this DLC. However, this location is pretty expansive and large in size. So, for that reason, this video is split up into two parts. In the first part, we covered the following: entering Shadow Keep from the front entrance, and exploring what we can of the Specimen Storehouse. We ended the video by going all the way up to the tippy top of the Specimen Storehouse to the main boss of the area, Messmer. In the second part, which is this one, we will cover the following: exploring the church district of Shadow Keep and how to access it, the path to the Scadutree Avatar boss fight and that respective boss fight, the other areas of the Specimen Storehouse we couldn't make it to in the first part, and the Commander Gaius boss fight. Yuck. Let's go ahead and get part 2 started. If you explore the Shadow Altus area, you may come across this location named More Ruins. Well, there's a deep cavern here, and if you jump down it correctly, okay, first you need to go down the right hole. Just ignore the curse blade perched up here, waiting for an inevitable Elden Ring surprise attack. All the way down here, we can climb this ladder that leads us to Bonnie Village. We can then take this bridge here to lead us to the Whipping Hut, which is an absolutely wild location name, with a crazy looking whip weapon right here. Anyways, we can cross this other bridge, which takes us to a grace cleverly named Grace leading to the village. We then can follow the path all the way up to this point here, which will allow us to climb up this ramp and enter the church district of Shadow Keep. And this honestly blew my mind. There is more to this dungeon than what we covered in the last episode. This legacy dungeon is huge, so let's keep going. The gimmick of this section of Shadow Keep is that we need to find a way to drain this water since this area is actually completely flooded. We start out by only being able to navigate on the rooftops here and some floating tree branches. Many crabs roam the rooftops, as well as these random exploding Messmer goons that act more as an obstacle rather than an enemy. If we take a left at the start to where these floating tree branches are, we hear and kind of see something genuinely terrifying.
Oh my god, bro.
If you couldn't tell by my character stopping, I had to pause and compel myself to make sure I didn't squeal like a pig. I'm terrified of the ocean, and what the fuck could possibly be in it. But that's another topic for another video. I remember going through this location for the first time not knowing what was lurking beneath me. I genuinely believed there was this new giant octopus monstrosity created specifically for this section of the dungeon, like a one-time use enemy, which would have been perfectly terrifying if that was the case. However, if we look closer at the footage, it's just a tree spirit. Keep in mind, I didn't notice this until the water was drained later, so I was quivering like a little baby jumping from branch to branch, trying to grab this legendary item. Which turns out to be a great ghost glovewort, which is alright, I guess. Anyways, we can continue along this way and jump here and run past these suicide bombers. Jump here, then here, and oh boy, a Fire Knight. Of course, they're prominent in the church district here as well. We took him out by throwing our venom, and for some reason I missed the glimpse of this beast jumping up from the water beneath us, so I still didn't know it was a tree spirit at this point. It took me forever to realize I was supposed to jump to this area, so I waltzed around like a Neanderthal and ran right into this death trap. I then ran around all silly-billy on this roof, and clearly I didn't learn my lesson from literally a few seconds ago. Anyways, I love the design of this area, but I don't think I had my brain turned on to explore it without dying in the stupidest ways possible. Exploring the decrepit and torn apart roofs, falling onto these pillars, and making risky jumps from up here to the floor made for an engaging and pulsating experience. Now, this door should have been locked for me. However, I did some dabbling around the Shadow Altus area before I got to this section of Shadow Keep, and came across a location called the Church of the Crusade. After entering the church, you will get invaded by an NPC named Fire Knight Quilin. I died a lot to him, and had to make this annoying run back to the church every time I got humbled by Coconut Head here. Once you defeat him, you will get a key to a prayer room. This key is used on this door here, and if we took out Fire Knight Quilin and Bellurat, then he will spawn here. However, this interaction with Fire Knight Quilin is not an invasion. Instead, it's a regular NPC interaction, and we can find him curled up on the floor yapping about Queen Marika despite being a Fire Knight of Messmer's. A traitor, one would call him. Now, if we have an Iris of Grace, like you see here in this footage, we have the option to give it to him. This causes Quilin to fizz away into the atmosphere, giving us the special reward of being able to summon Bullcut to fight with us in combat. He apparently attacks as soon as he's summoned, which I haven't seen any other Spirit Ashes have this effect, so I guess this is pretty unique. I haven't tested it out yet, so let me know what you think of this summon if you've tried it yourselves. However, I had a feeling there was another option we could have chosen, relating to Quileen's fate. I looked up what the other option was because in this footage I didn't have the Iris of Occultation, which is this thing. If you have this black eye in your inventory and give it to Quileen, he'll die on the spot due to the combination of having a hideous haircut and now a black and blue face only a mother could love. This will give you Quileen's Greatsword, which is a heavy thrusting sword that leans more towards dexterity than strength when you level it up a good amount. And it's alright from what I've heard. You know what, I'm happy with the summon I got, even if it meant I had to save this stupid NPC and his AI that has destroyed my character about 20 times. Maybe the bowl cut is the way to go. We can go down this hallway to find another Merry Fire Knight. These enemies are too damn frequent for elite enemies. I feel like I'm saying this every second I get the chance to. And I'll keep my mouth shut if I keep getting rewards like this. Huh, never mind, here's another Fire Knight. If we peek into this room here, we can see an item perched on top of this headless statue. However, reading this message saved me, telling me not to even try to jump for it until we find lever. Nope, it's not this lever over here. It's all the way over this way. These bats went bonkers and fired sonic ray waves of death into my sizzling cranium caused by the previous Fire Knight duels. But with one slap on the wrist, we can teach them their manners. Elden Ring messages that include the word hole aren't usually helpful, but this one was. I predicted this surprise attack from a mile away, but yet still got hit by this bat's stupid projectile. We then went and climbed this ladder, which will lead us to the lever, and a sick cutscene. After destroying the infrastructure to Shadow Keep, we now have full access to the church district. While I wasn't ever the biggest fan of the environment change gimmick because of Liam Loyce in Dark Souls 2, I guess this is pretty cool. Man, and all that for a somber smithing stone? Come on. I'm kidding, of course. There's a lot of fun things to do now. Like jump down to the ground level, activate this grace here, and fight some crabs. Oh, and there's that tree spirit. Let's try that again, but not make it a gank fight. You know how it goes, dodge the tree spirit's wonky attacks, and fight more with the camera than the actual behemoth in front of you. Your reward for your patience with this everlasting fight is the Mantle of Thorn sorcery. When you cast it, you'll be able to damage enemies with your dodge rolls. It sounds insanely lame, but who am I to judge? Now inside this area, we can hear some demonic-like chanting and come across a named Fire Knight, Wego. And this one likes to summon his suicide bomber minions. He has a lot of health and likes to spam this stupid spell, but once you take him out, you get his pinwheel looking helmet. When reading the description of it, we can learn that this guy was just lonely, and he was a bored old man who wanted something to do, so he joined Messmer's army as a necromancer. A sad and tragic story to poor old Wego. Behind the statue, we can grab the Fire Knight seal, so if you're using any of their cool tricks, this will provide great use to you. Going deeper inside this area will lead us to a Battlefield Priest cookbook and some double doors that lead to a suspiciously long elevator ride. Ah, it's finally happening. FromSoft is taking us to hell again. What hell could be worse than going through the Cave of the Dead from DS2 for an eternity? Well, now that I think about it, nothing really. Anyways, there's a grace here and a very linear path that leads us to an Iris of Grace. Even though we used one on Quileen earlier, there's another opportunity to use this Iris of Grace on an NPC later down the line, so we'll keep note of this for now. Here's another Grace, and Marika's rune. Sweet. Don't use this rune yet unless you plan on leveling up, like, right now. This area is fucking cool. This is the closest we'll be able to get to the Scadutree throughout this whole DLC, and to have such a grimy and gooey arena like this one with a foggy sky dashed with a yellow tint, it's such a cool set piece for this soon-to-be fight that springs out on you out of nowhere. This buff sunflower is the Scadutree Avatar, and I'll be honest, I don't have much to say about it. It doesn't really have that much health, It has some moves where it flails its arms around in a circle motion. It takes the most damage when you smack it upside its noggin, and it uses a lot of spells that summon Scadutree roots from the ground that home into your vicinity. It really is a grand and short fight, and while I died to it on my first attempt, I bested him on the second one. I don't know, maybe I came too late in the game to fight him? I didn't think I had that high of a Scadutree level. Nah bro, what? Yeah, he has a second phase, and with this one he starts out by slingshotting himself forward at you at Mach speed. I died immediately after this move, and decided to take some time to gather some more Scadutree fragments. I did so, and came back with a giant pot on my head to protect my cranium from this sunflower on roids and his goofy head slam attacks. One thing to note is the massive amounts of damage you can do if you hit the head of the avatar, which can make this fight pretty simple if you're patient and find out which attacks leave his head open, which is almost all of them honestly. And right before he does the phase change, you can do a visceral attack that will cut some of the boss's health down when he eventually does get into his second phase. It's a nice touch, and it makes this fight easier than it should be. Other than the inclusion of the slingshot move and its ability to spawn some easily dodgeable projectiles, the second phase is also pretty simple. It took me some time to get accustomed to the patterns of the attacks, but I bested the avatar. Your reward for this fight... Wait, nothing's popping. Alright, FromSoft, you're hilarious, aren't you? Yeah, there's a third phase, and I promise it's the last one. For this phase, this boss gets this big AoE explosion attack, which also shoots out golden piss needles all over the arena. This was pretty tough to figure out how to dodge, so I just ran away and prayed every time the avatar did this attack. Okay, this section is getting pretty long, and since this counts as an endurance fight, let's just play out the winning fight right now. For defeating this muddy shit stain with a vengeance, you get its remembrance, and you also get Megala's Great Rune. Interesting. It seems Mikola left his rune behind and searched for the Gate of Divinity in the Tower of Shadows. This will be a very important item to have later, and by later I mean for the final fight of the DLC, so we'll hold on to it for now. When we turn in the Remembrance at Roundtable Hold, we have the option of getting a colossal weapon of the Sunflower's fucking head, or an incantation called the Land of Shadow. Since I like giant weapons and say I'll use them, but never do, I took the Sunflower head. So that's all we can do relating to the Scadutree Avatar fight. Let's head back to the Church District. We went back to this grace and explored the barren and damp ground area of the Church District, and picked up some miscellaneous items. I attempted to kill Mama Crab here, but Daddy Crab made a grand entrance and squished my body like my name was Flat Stanley. I killed the Crab family on my next attempt, found the shortcut that loops back around, tried getting this item on the hand of the statue, but got humbled by the 2 Fire Knights I ran past. And then this happened, which was a knee slapper. I then took out the Fire Knights, and finally grabbed that item, which turns out to be a Scadutree fragment. I eventually got lost and couldn't figure out where to go from here, but lo and behold, I found a new pathway, and I trudged onto this new road. Well, first we gotta take another elevator. Wait a second, we're right next to the Specimen Storehouse. Whew, the interconnectivity in this dungeon is magical. We can run up to this grace, which is dubbed as the back section of the storehouse. Over to the left, we came across a very familiar encounter, and make quick work of it. And where this knight was, is the Carrion Thrusting Shield, once wielded by Rolana, now abandoned here, in the back section of the storehouse. The Thrusting Shields are one of the new weapon types this DLC adds. There's only 2 Thrusting Shields in total, which I find strange, but oh well. They don't really appeal to me, so I haven't even tried them out yet, but hey, if you want to craft a build all around these Thrusting Shields, I shouldn't be the one to stop you. This ladder is immensely long, but it leads us up to a Fire Knight in a position an Elden Ring scrub like me absolutely loves. Up these stairs is another Fire Knight, which absolutely demolished me with its spinning cyclone of doom attacks. That just seemed to come out so much faster than I ever anticipate when fighting these guys. They seem to always provide for an interesting fight, and I still feel like I don't have their movesets down even while doing my second playthrough of this DLC as I speak. Here tucked all the way in the back is a corpse with the Fire Serpent incantation on its writhing maggot-infested body. And this incantation is sick. It's a pretty quick sorcery to use, and you can easily fire one of these bad boys in the middle of an ongoing combo and be perfectly safe doing so. It also does some solid damage, and is probably one of my favorite offensive spells from this DLC. It just feels so satisfying being able to use this. We can jump through this conveniently placed hole in the wall, and climb up the side scaffolding to reach a grace and the loft area. Riding this elevator up allows us to navigate the scary rafters of the storehouse. We got bats, fire knights, and sorcerers all waiting for an opportunity to knock you off to a long fall to the dusty floors of the bottom of the storehouse. We can find a good amount of spells here, including this Wrath from Afar incantation. And here's a fire knight that likes to fire this holy circle of death whenever he gets the chance to, which can easily knock back your character and send you skydiving. I outranged him, and my reward for defeating him was another goddamn smithing stone. This DLC likes to give you smithing stone for every other item you pick up. Like seriously, these things are everywhere. I swear, I had like barely any smithing stones when I came into this DLC, and by the time I got done with it, I had like 50 of each. This can be annoying, but it can also be pretty beneficial. It allows you to change up your build and switch to DLC weapons if you want to try them out. But when you're too sheltered and scared to even try to experiment like I sadly was during this first playthrough, then this abundance of smithing stones doesn't really do much for you. We hilariously sent this bat to his fall despite having wings he could, fly with. I went back to a grace for some odd reason, which respawned this stupid fire knight, and, well, he thought it'd be funny to knock me off. I found the safe spot behind this lift here, and taking it down will lead us to yet another Fire Knight, but more importantly, a rune of the unsung hero. If you do some finagling with these elevators and land on top of this one, it will lead us to a risky jump to a Spirit Ash summon, Fire Knight Hildy, whose ashes were enshrined as a charm to protect the Specimen Storehouse. It may be a basic Fire Knight, but hey, it's nice to have, I guess. If we go here, and then here, and here, we can find another balcony-like area with an elevator, which leads us down to another elevator. And this one leads you all the way down to a grace, and a gate leading you to a pretty open area. Over here in this room, we can find a Scadutree fragment. However, if you have the Oh Mother gesture, which you can grab right here in Bonnie Village, then you can use it in front of this beheaded Marika statue to open up a hidden path to a very beautiful region, the Hinterlands. We'll explore this area in a video involving a quest we'll need to do to fight a remembrance boss, so be on the lookout for that one. Anyways, we can walk into this open area here, and I hope you're ready for this one. This is Commander Gaius, a stubborn individual indeed. He's a horseback boss who likes to constantly dash towards you, and you can easily get hit by this dash attack if you don't have the instincts of a mega gamer and make a frame-perfect dodge every time he does it. Gaius and his noble steed can send out flurries of attacks your way, and at first this fight felt so unfair and bullshit. This fight lets you use Torrent for it, but there is literally no benefit to it. Gaius can outrun your horse, and if anything, this fight is harder to use Torrent for and provides no use to me whatsoever. It's no doubt easier to try to fight Gaius on foot rather than trying to avoid certain attacks with Torrent. And let's talk about this dash attack. This was the first moment in DLC where an attack felt flat out unfair and non-dodgeable. I was able to get lucky a few times and dodge it, but it feels near frame perfect to not get hit by this damn thing. However, after doing some research, there are actually ways to not get hit by it, and one of them I probably would have never even thought to try while first fighting Gaius. Still, even with these negatives, this fight is pretty solid once you learn it. It's pretty fun dodging certain attacks like this one where Gaius and his horse attack almost at the same time, but not exactly. It's important to dodge and position yourself to dodge both attacks with one dodge, and holy fuck, this was fun to learn and pull off. It's so satisfying. And the gravity magic, it's so cool. I mean, Radahn and Gaius were rivals in their youth due to their gravity magic skills, and seeing the attacks Gaius can pull off makes this make sense. He's got gravity beams he can shoot out from his weapon, rocks he can sling out onto your player, the gravity slam attack, and more. And all of these attacks are sick. And even his common attacks, like the easy to dodge swings and ass kick that his stupid donkey can do if you're hiding behind the behind for too long. I gotta say, this fight keeps you on your toes, and even with some bullshit, that didn't stop me from eventually taking Gaius down. After defeating Gaius, we get his remembrance, which tells us Gaius was cursed at birth, which led him to making a friendship with Messmer. And, in turn, Gaius became the commander of Messmer's army. We can turn this remembrance in at the Round Table Hold to get either the Sword Lance or the Blades of Stone Sorcery. Just like with the Scadutree Avatar, my Neanderthal brain likes big weapons to bonk things with, so I chose the Sword Lance. So apparently Gaius was cursed? In what way, you may ask? Well, if we take this new path that opens up at the arena we fought Gaius in, we can come across an Albernaric enemy. If we take them out, we get Gaius' Greaves, and reading the item description tells us that Gaius was an Albernaric. And the thing about Albernarics is that, at birth, their legs are paralyzed. So these leggings are some sort of cruel joke since Gaius is fucking crippled. Great storytelling, FromSoft. Anyways, we find this Albernaric hut, and here we can pick up the Snapshot Talisman, which boosts the attack power of precision-aimed shots. And all the way over here, we can find a Scadutree chalice with 5 Scadutree fragments laying out for you, ready to be taken. What an outstanding reward. With Shadowkeep finally being fully explored and all 4 bosses being taken out, this will lead us to our honest review. Let's hop right into it. So this is just a reminder, I'll also be covering the content from the part 1 video of Shadowkeep, so if you haven't seen that, do yourself a favor and definitely check it out. For the Legacy Dungeons of the Shadow of Erdtree DLC, this is the criteria I will be reviewing it with. The gameplay, the level design and environment, the enemies, the bosses, which all 4 of them will get their own rank, and the loot. The ranks I'll give out to each category includes the following. We have the bad rating, okay, good, great, amazing, and perfect. Let's start with reviewing the gameplay. It's easy to make a fun to play through dungeon due to Elden Ring's gameplay being superb. And when you add the combination of a well-constructed and multi-layered dungeon like Shadowkeep, you get an outstanding gameplay experience. I'll have to say this multiple times during the review, but this place is the heart of the Shadow Realm. So, being able to conquer it despite how difficult the location can be, felt satisfying knowing this is a pretty important location. I had a rough time going through the front entrance area after the shit hippo fight, but that was the game's way of telling me, grab more Scadutree fragments and level up more, you bum. The enemy placements felt fair, and fighting the plethora of Fire Knights, while repetitive, can keep you on edge while exploring every nook and cranny of the Specimen Storehouse. Speaking of which, the Storehouse was immensely fun to play through. The pacing was great, it never threw too much at you to feel overwhelmed, but there was always something to fight or do around each intricately placed corner. With the Church District, I actually enjoyed the re-explore to find more gimmick, and that's not an easy one to pull off when it comes to the Souls games. And wrapping back around to the other areas of the Specimen Storehouse you couldn't get to by going through the front entrance made this dungeon feel pretty interconnected and surprising to explore. I really enjoyed the experience here, and it's probably the peak of gameplay when it comes to this DLC. For these reasons, I give the gameplay of Shadowkeep perfect. I wouldn't change a thing about it. This is no doubt the best gameplay portion of the whole DLC. I don't even know where to start with the level design and environment of Shadowkeep. To start off, I'll say that I absolutely love it. The decrepit and dark nature of this gigantic looming castle hovering over the Shadow Realm was done so damn well. These dark shadowy things in the sky add a nice touch to the design of the environment. The burnt ships and shady decorations around the castle are outstanding as well. I love the Specimen Storehouse and everything about its looks. I love how large and high it is. Fuck, even the damn bookcases just look outstanding here. And the Church District is pretty solid as well. Like I've said before, I like the touch of re-exploration. You start out by jumping from rooftop to rooftop and log to log for about half an hour. Then once you drain the whole place, you get to explore the damp and soggy ground level. The 2 sections of this district really pair up nicely together. The boss arenas are all a spectacle, with my favorite being the Scadutree base. It's a grotesquely good looking arena for a wonky and goofy fight I really enjoyed. I could go on and on about the level design and environment of Shadowkeep, but I'll leave it at that. I think it's perfect. I love every single thing about the look and feel of this place. So, the enemies, which are primarily sorcery shadow people, some militiamen, Messmer soldiers, bats, and the Black and Fire Knights. Everything else but the Fire Knights are stuff we have probably fought before. So, the Fire Knights are the only new enemy to really brief into. Like I've said multiple times throughout the video, they can be repetitive, but provide fun fights around each wall of the Specimen Storehouse. They have entertaining to dodge, fast-paced combos, and a good mix of ranged fire spells. They're also all designed in very cool ways, especially the unique ones placed around the dungeon like Wego, Salsa, or Cood. So with that, I think the enemies of Shadowkeep are great, primarily because of the Fire Knights, and also because of how repetitive some enemies in this location are. I mean, it is the heart of the Shadow Realm, so we should expect a grand amount of Messmer soldiers and his lovely Fire Knights in this area itself. For the bosses, I talked a good amount about each one in each video they have appeared in, and I also plan to do a video that ranks each important boss from this DLC as a grand finale of my coverage for it, so I'll give a speed run on the ratings for them, besides on the Golden Hippopotamus, which I think is an okay boss. It is definitely one of my least favorites from this DLC. Since I stated in the first part, I'll explain why I didn't like this fight in the honest review of the second part. Let me go ahead and unleash this now. This boss is a rehash of an overworld mini-boss, but with a somewhat cool second phase. Many of the basic attacks are annoying to deal with, and this hippo is stupidly flexible for no reason. The camera lock is in a terrible place and can disadvantage you a lot during the fight. And this charge attack is so misleading and insane to dodge. Also, the arena is so damn small. So that's why I think this boss isn't too great. Messmer, the Impaler, is no doubt a perfect boss, and one of my favorite fights in the whole of Elden Ring. Stay tuned for the boss ranking video, where I actually defeat all of the bosses solo instead of using Spirit Ashes. I'll be able to provide good explanations on why I like some of these bosses more in that video. The Scadutree Avatar gets a great rating. I no doubt enjoyed this fight more than I should have, but it was just a fun experience overall. The 3 phases definitely caught me off guard and threw me for a loop. Yeah, it's shocking during a first playthrough, but I could see the novelty wearing off on future playthroughs. Commander Gaius gets a great rating. Yeah, I'm shocked by that too. I may not be a fan of certain things about the fight, but after finding out ways to get around some of the bullshit, this is a pretty fun fight. Now, let's talk about the loot of Shadowkeep. I think it's great. You get some solid and viable weapons, spells, and more from here, and it's worth scrounging every little pickup light you come across as you'll be able to get some solid stuff. For example, we have the Bolt Drake and Pearlescent Talismans, +3, which are crucial for having resistance during certain fights. The Fire Serpent incantation is perfect for Battle Mage type builds. The Thrusting Shields, while not appealing to me, have a cool and unique playstyle I can see people building around. The Shadowtree Thorn spell is absolutely fucking busted, and is no doubt the most overpowered spell in the game at the time I'm making this script. The Spirit Ashes are cool, but not some of the best ever. And I could list on and on every single loot item, but I won't. I don't really see a reason to. I'm not one of those guys who cranks numbers into a calculator and figures out the -1 damage difference between each item. So I may not be qualified to even give this a rating at this point, but it's great. End of story. So for the overall ranking, Shadowkeep gets an amazing rating. It's one of, if not, the best legacy dungeons in Elden Ring. It's still behind Landell, of course, nothing can really beat that location. But this is a very, very solid dungeon. That concludes the honest review segment, as well as the whole video. I hope you guys enjoyed watching me yap about one of my favorite locations in this DLC. If you enjoyed this video, why don't you subscribe? I'm trying to make YouTube a primary focus of my life, and your support would be greatly appreciated. Even if you don't subscribe, your viewership in itself means a lot to me. This is Ace speaking. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and as always, peace out.